Alright, so today on Hadima Radio, we're going to be discussing Project Hadima Project. I got the name wrong, man. Just break the mold right there. Alright. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking. It's been a couple months since I last did one of these, and I'm going to talk briefly a little bit about Hadima Project. The last one was me rambling about 3 toy cameras that one of them really shouldn't exist, but, life is weird, and I want to discuss Hadima Project. It is pronounced Hadima Project, by the way. I've had someone once call it Hadima, like had, not ha, Hadima Project, Hadima Project. That was a very strange experience from me, but please don't call it that. Yeah. How to go about this? Well, we could start with Chicago. Chicago's a great city. It is the backdrop of the project itself. I have had many weird occurrences in my adventures taking photos there, and for other projects and for Hadima Project. The funny thing is, this is like the 5th take of me recording this because the first 3 were way too embellishy in narrative, I guess, just monologue about what Hadima Project is, because I have in front of me and I'm looking at it a very, very long, just book essentially of the lore of the project and everything that I wrote probably about 4 or 5 months ago in preparation for this, because you gotta get it ready ahead of time. I haven't been putting this off, but those takes I didn't really like them, and the last take I just did about 5 minutes ago went a bit way too much on the weird stuff that I've experienced in Chicago, which is, we're going to try and consolidate that in this take and see how it goes. So, Chicago is a lovely city. It is a city of the past and the future. It's a weird combination of the 20th century and the 21st, and that is kind of a part of the reason why visually I chose it to be the backdrop of Hadima Project, which is much more, compared to my other projects, a tonal and visual thing. It's a lot of my work. Sorry if my chair is squeaking, and that catches in the mic. But Hadima Project's interesting compared to some of my other works. I think the only other piece that comes close to it might be Darklight, but Darklight honestly has more people. it has a couple more people. And I hope in the future, when I continue it, it has more people in it. But yeah, Hadima Project is very much kind of an ambient, tonal series. It's kind of hard to describe without going deep into like lore and such, but yeah. I could just kind of give the spark notes, I guess, of what the city is in the project. It's the backing is Chicago, but the city is Hadima itself. That is the intent with that. Is it's a fictional city, similar to, if you were to think about it, the way like Atlantis is in fiction, or the Emerald City in Oz, I guess. Hadima is a dystopia. It takes place in a fictional future where time is a commodity the same way, say, gasoline or oil is, and it is needed to progress time throughout the world. It is obtained by harvesting it from various biomatter, which contains time itself, because the planet itself in this fictional world does not have time itself. You need to take time from things that live to continue time for other living things. It's kind of a weird, not parasitic, but just unfortunate reality for this world. And not a whole lot of people live in the city of Hadima. It's quite desolate. It is a dystopia that is under a lot of security control given the nature of what goes on there. I will say the rest of the world of Hadima is rather similar to regular Earth. The real world, it's very similar to the real world. It's just there are various cities of time, quote unquote, that exist throughout the world to let the world function as normal. And the coloration for Hadima is in reality what I've done with it is a chemically modified Kodak 400 stock of Ultramax. I've been doing this for a few years, and I'm aware that some other organizations out there know how to do this as well. But yeah, it's technically it is shot on film. The whole thing is shot on film. I've done virtually no manipulation with the images at all. I think that's the thing. I don't manipulate images. I used to do that quite a bit back in pre-2020. I would do that quite a bit in Photoshop. I rarely use Photoshop these days. If I need to use it, then I use it to clean up something like get rid of a license plate or get rid of a street sign or thing. That's the extent that I did that with Hadima Project as well. It's like aside from cropping, I have done very little to no editing, which was kind of an interesting thing. I am aware that a few of the pictures, yeah, I got rid of a few street signs. I'm trying to think, like, what did I do? I got rid of a few street signs. I got rid of the Trump logo on the front of the Trump Hotel skyscraper that's on down by the river. And the point of doing that is more for in theming with that project, doing that kind of stuff is more to genericize the city itself to not have it's this is just kind of a thing of mine is that I'm not super big this is gonna take a slight detour in topic, but I'm not a big fan of cars and branding in my photos because when you throw cars and branding in an image, that timestamps it, which does not bode super well with a quote-unquote city of time, where it can be any point in time, and you don't want stuff like that much. So, to the best of my abilities, I have kind of erased as much as I can from that. I've also done my best to erase things that say like the city of Chicago. They're like a lot of the street signs say that just as like marquee pre-print things that are on them. Sorry. I'm still getting over having had COVID the past couple weeks, so that was a fun experience, but it was fine. I didn't get too sick. I have this residual kind of cough. But yeah, the bottom line, now this is where I'm just like, I feel like I've talked about this too much. There's not a whole lot of editing in Hadima Project. There's very little in it. Any that I've done has been more to genericize and make things more universal, is a way of putting it. And that's the thing, I don't really do any editing with, I don't do a whole lot of editing itself. I mostly leave that up to my physical editing that I do with film itself. I don't do a whole lot of digital editing anymore. I did a lot a while ago, but most of any quirks or weird things like that I have decided to do was done physically. So, where to continue from there? Yeah, Chicago's a good city. I like it a lot. The CTA is a fine transit line. I might as well discuss a little bit of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, a lot of people don't have positive thoughts about the city of Chicago. I think it's a fine place. It has its issues. I'm quite hardened to the occurrences there that I have experienced and have seen personally, and I kind of get the vibe of the city at this point. I've been going there for many years now. Do I want to share any personal anecdotes in that and like the weird stuff I've experienced? We'll just go down a little bit of a checklist, I guess. It's like, yes, I've seen police brutality. Yes, I've seen homeless people shitting in front of me. Yes, I've seen drug addicts fighting each other in the subway systems. Yes, I've seen a guy have a ton of hypodermic needles pour out of his backpack randomly on the CTA. Yes, there's a lot of weird stuff. Yes, I've had people try to steal stuff from me. No, they've never succeeded. It's just like I don't know. I kind of vibe with the chaos of humanity a little bit. It's you just need to be mentally hardened to this and spatially aware of things. You need to not be a tourist, essentially. I'm sorry. I don't know why that was funny to me, but it's like once you get the grit of the city, and you do kind of see people who obviously are just kind of there for like a trip or something like that. They're very easy to spot, and I can see how people in foreign countries easily spot out like Americans and such that are visiting their country. Americans are very, very for lack of a better word, I would say naive in terms of how the world works when it comes to urban metro kind of living. So, yeah, it's quite fun to people watch people like that. But yeah, there is a lot of bad. You just need to be mindful of it and not think about it too much. And I think that's the part that a lot of people forget to do, is just like don't let things that are negative like that you might see on TV or in the internet persuade you in not seeking out adventure or going places as a way of wording that. So, like, yeah, Chicago has its up and downs. It has its places you don't go. It has its places you absolutely should visit that are wonderful. But, yeah, I think, not to sound like some old fart, but I think the media has kind of, when something happens in the city, it jumps on it and it makes it like, oh, the whole city is like this. And it's really not. It's not. It's just kind of weird how that happens. It's like, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that happened, like blah 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 happened in west side of Chicago. It's like, oh, that happened in South Bend yesterday. It's just like this is America. That kind of stuff happens every day. So you kind of just get used to it. I don't want to say jaded, but I don't know. That's just me. It's like I've had guns to my head through work at various times. I've had people break into bathrooms while I'm using them and such. It's like you get kind of used to just the things you can't control, and you just kind of cope in the moment. It's like you can't do anything. You can't. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do in that moment? You just kind of have to deal with it and let it pass, and that is that. That is that. But yeah. So yeah, I already brought up the hypodermic needle. I want to specify that one. That was one of the first. I want to say that was an event that happened. I want to say the first time I went there to start working on photo projects. This was years ago, many years ago. But I got on the CTA, and I want to say we were stopping at Merchandise Mart. It might have been the one after that. It might have been Chicago. Chicago Library or whatever that one is. And this guy with a backpack is just standing in front of me at the door to the train, and I don't remember exactly. I just remember it happening. His backpack just kind of opened behind him on its own, and just a ton of hypodermic needles poured out of it. And nobody was phased. Nobody was phased at all on the train. Not even me. I was just more like, huh, that was weird. And he just started picking up all the needles and put them back in his backpack. It's just like, you don't ask questions. You can't ask questions. If you want to ask that guy a question, good luck. I don't know what's gonna happen in that moment, but yeah, you get kind of used to just weird stuff happening. I guess it's like you're jaded, you're hardened to anything can happen while you're out here, but at the same time, you need to be cautious and just be smart about what you're doing. So, anyway, Chicago's a fine city. How long was that a divert? That might have been like a 10-minute just ramble about like weirdness of Chicago. I don't know. I'm not keeping track of time at the moment. I have a timer, but yeah. So Hadima Project. Let's get back onto the project. So Hadima Project itself is more of a it's a thematic project about the city that happens to be Chicago. I need to stop getting funny about that. But yeah, it itself is a cold, stark, and rather like it's future. It's near future, I guess I would say. It's not futuristic. It's not like Blade Runner or anything like that. It's not like the Jetsons either. But it is like near future, different. It has a different social culture. It has a different culture in and of itself. I think I was about to kind of talk about this concept, but the color, yeah, I was gonna divert off of the film that I use for it versus like why does it look the way it does. So I read a lot of books. Let's start off with that. So I read a lot of books. I read a lot of architectural and, for lack of a better word, how do I put this? So I'm fascinated by sci-fi fantasy architecture and color grading and things like that. So I have a few books about architecture in animation, and my previous work and influences from two other photographers also very much dictate like my style and approach for Hanima Project, which it kind of applies to everything I do because that's just how I've self-trained myself. But if I were to a lot of my influences for Hadima Project as well are based off of music. I'm rather synesthetic, so when I listen to music, I do visualize a lot of stuff. So that is something that discussing that with other artists, they tend to be quite fascinated by. To me, it's just how I exist, so I don't double think it or anything. I didn't. It's only been in recent years that I've realized that other people can't really do that. Is that? I guess. I don't know how that works, but to me it's just like, okay, how do you visualize things then? Anyway, I'm not gonna go on that topic, but yeah. So the works of Stephen. I'm just gonna list off of some things that are very influential for it. The works of Stephen Wilson, Lasse Hoyle, Carl Glover. I have a list here in the giant book that I've written of the lore. Rintaro's Metropolis. So there's two Metropolis movies. There's the one from the late 20s. I have seen bits of it, but I've never watched the whole thing. I love the Metropolis movie from 2000, I believe it was, or 2001. That is Rintaro's Metropolis. It's an anime movie, and I have books on the architecture and the art design for all of the backgrounds, like not the animation itself, but just like the key art backgrounds, like the city itself, the metropolis itself. It is a beautiful movie that I recommend to you that a lot of people have not seen. I think it premiered on Toonami back in 2001, and then it just kind of faded away. It was like a big premiere, and then it got a lot of great critical reviews. It's a very well-regarded art film, but it's just one of those things that it's like, it was big in the moment, then everyone forgot about it 20 years ago. But it is one of the most beautiful animated movies I think I've ever seen. I recommend it. It's based off a story from the creator of Astro Boy. I know nothing about Astro Boy, but I like Metropolis. Yeah, aside from aside from Metropolis and there are other things like Akira. I've seen Akira. It's a great movie. I think Metropolis is better, honestly, sadly. Fight me over it. But there's other things. Lasse Hoyle's work and Carl Glover's is very. I'm self-taught off of that work, so that's kind of a definitive thing for me. So that's just kind of how I present the way that they presented their work is very much the way that I present my work, which is very straightforward, stark, and beautiful at the same time in its own way. So a lot of things like in Hadima Project, there's a lot of kind of dark imagery, but it's not like grimdark kind of stuff. It's more sterile. It's not necessarily more medical, but it has that kind of grain to itself and what it tonally is. And that's something I've always put in most of my work. That's just kind of how it is. It's not necessarily clinical, but it has this kind of starkness to it that is straightforward to the point visually, but it's not. There's a lot going on in it that makes you look at it and think. Uh, a kind of way of thinking about that would be there. What's a way to put it? I recommend looking up the work if you're interested in that kind of work or have liked my stuff in the past. But it's like looking at the obelisk in 2001 Space Odyssey. It's that kind of ominous, smart, and unknown. The best way I can put it is it's clinical in the way that it's done, but it's not soulless. It's that unknown that you don't know what's exactly going on, and I want you to think yourself about what's going on. It's something like that. I'm gonna get off the philosophy thing right now, but that's kind of a way that is me trying to grasp for a way to explain physically what I'm thinking. It all that's the thing. It all makes sense in your head, but when you try to put it into words, it's that's like trying to say a language you don't know how to verbalize. But yeah. Have I talked about anything? Well, we could talk about Chicago a little bit more. So I think I'm good talking about Hadima Project. I think the one thing I didn't cover was the coloration. I don't think I talked about the coloration of the project itself, which kind of ties back into the theming of like the dark stuff and the tones and things like that. You may notice that the sky is often either kind of white or orange or pinkish, more of a peachish more than pinkish in Hadima Project, and that is due to in lore. In reality, that's me messing around with the chemical makeup of the film in a specific way. In lore, that is me depicting the side effects that are afflicting the city due to the new time industry that is processing time for consumption. It's one of the side effects of that process happening. It creates a radius of discoloration around its locale. Think of it the same. My thought about that is the same kind of situation that in reality there are fogs and hazes around Chicago and more specifically Gary, Indiana, quite a lot. Gary, Indiana is not a good city. I think I've already talked about that before, but yeah, it's that kind of industrial side effect of haze. But in this city, because it's not really processing something like oil or gas, it's just creating a bizarre visual side effect. So while you're in the city, that's how it looks. When you're outside of the city, from a distance, you would still see it look like that, but it would be a rather strange, kind of like what's the way of putting it? Kind of like a lens flare. You know when you get a lens flare and you see that kind of bubble of something color. I'm trying to dumb this down as best I can, just so I don't overindulge in it. That discoloration is more like a radius around. So you would look at the city and it would just have this strange discoloration haze around it. It would be I would love to get a visual like that on film, but unfortunately I can't really do that with the way I do it at the moment. It's just set up shop across at Gary and take a long distance shot of that and just have specifically that radius there with that discoloration and everything else around it looks normal. That would be lovely to do, but I don't have the means to do that right now. Maybe in the future if I were feeling ballsy. Oh, that would be a trip. But yeah. Chicago. It's a lovely city. You got record stores, you got camera stores, you have the theaters, you have the arts, you have museums and amusements beyond your wildest dreams. Yeah, people are weird about the city. I believe I talked about that at the beginning. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about it. It's a good city. I like it. It's a good place to just walk around and see what happens if you're up for an adventure. There's some good food too. I know some good Italian restaurants, if you know what I mean. Some good eating. But yeah, I think I've goofed off enough. Do I want to talk about Sincerely? I don't think so. Do I want to talk about Glass Sky? Not really. I think I'm good on my topics, really. I'm working quite a bit on... I'm continuing to work on Hadima Project. It's towards the end of its run, for the time being. I need to actually go out towards Detroit to wrap things up weird enough for it. It's I've worked all these years, I've worked many years on this project, or it's all going to be in Chicago. I did a few photos up north for some things that I needed for tertiary work, and then now I need to go to Detroit, of all places, to wrap it up. It's just why is this at the end? Why do I have to go to Detroit? It's just because I have to, because there's some environments and buildings that don't exist in Chicago that do exist in Detroit, sadly. So I'll be doing that eventually. Get around to it. I gotta finish that up. Put this to rest. Compile what I have. See whether or not it can be put into a book, maybe. If it's not to my quality perfectionist preferences, then it will continue. But eventually, the goal is a book. So, we'll see. We will see. That's the goal of all my projects, is for them to all be books. I'd love them to be fabric-bound, hardcover books, with an image insert on the front. Now I'm just fantasizing how I would love to present this stuff. That's the whole thing as well. It's just the artistry doesn't just go into the art itself, it goes into the packaging. The pretty boxes and bows and everything you can wrap them up in. But yeah. So, yeah. I'll just list off a few things, I guess. Read books about architecture. Look up fantasy architecture. Listen to good music. Watch good movies. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know how else to end this. Do not buy fake Nikes from a guy who brings a trash bag onto your local CTA line and tells you that they are real. I have seen people do that on the trains, and they are fake Nikes. I am sorry, but they are not real. You're not going to buy a real pair of Jordans for $25. People, man. People. I don't know. I think that's enough for me. I have entertained this concept enough. I've been in a very good mood. I am very sorry if this has been like scatterbrain. If in my pausing and hesitation here has not been enough evidence of me just being like, oh, how do I end this? What do I say? Yeah, if this has been scatterbrain, sorry. That's just how my brain works. I don't know how to end this. So I'm just pushing the button. See you next time, and have a good night.